All right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks again for joining the Training, Learning, and Development Community's AIDC 23, the Accessible and Inclusive Design Conference. This is our third year running doing this event, and we are so glad that you're here with us. Let's see here. We have a ton of people in the session, and really looking forward to having our opening. I guess, Bela, you're the keynote this morning. So you're opening the entire event.
Yeah.
And Bela has been with us, shared so many times with TLDC, and I had the pleasure of actually meeting Bela face to face in Las Vegas last year at DevLearn, which was really a lot of fun. And I have I'm going to go ahead and just read out your bio real quick, Bela.
Okay.
Bela is an instructional designer, DEIA practitioner, inclusive solutions specialist. Known for her authenticity and vulnerability, Bela disrupts spaces unapologetically to create change. As a passionate advocate for underrepresented groups, she draws on her personal experiences as a neurodivergent, queer, visually and physically disabled Latin woman to lead conversations on advocacy, tech, inclusion, diversity, disability, and accessibility. I admire you so much for that, Bela. Bela is an award-winning leader in the DEIA space and the founder of Intuibel. She provides consultative services as an instructional designer, DEIA practitioner, and inclusive solution specialist. She teaches courses, coaches others in the L&D space, and builds community support systems. You even have like that working, like a co-work space that I see that you regularly host, which is very, very cool. And today your session is Transformative Equity, the Power of Inclusive Quality Standards. With that, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away, and I'll just hide myself from the screen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luis. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at, friends. Luis also lied. He said he was going to do a short bio. That was probably the longest bio I've ever heard, but I'm not complaining. It was pretty cool. I want to jump right in because I want to make sure that we have enough time for anything. Feel free to toss up in the chat where you're tuning in from and what you're up to these days while I get my session pulled up here. And I always tell folks every time I do a talk, I swear, I feel like a noob. I feel like I've never done this before. But I am streaming it from PowerPoint this time, which is something new for me. So hopefully this will be a much better experience. And okay, can you all let me know if you can see what's on the screen? I see thumbs up. Lovely. I'm not sure if I'm seeing the correct chat. It says I'm posting to the event feed. Devin, is that how I'm interacting with everybody here? Or is that like a private backstage thing? Or Luis, I just want to make sure that if I'm typing something or I'm reading all of your comments that I'm in the right space.
I think, wait, let's see here. Yeah, the event feed is the whole event. And if you want to chat yet, just close out that event feed and just get to the chat. You'll see like a row of icons on the right that are kind of smaller that run.
I see it. Oh, air me. You need to stop making changes. Okay. Good deal. I see what you mean now. All right. Hello, everyone. Again, Luis, thank you for that wonderful welcome. Everybody can see my screen. I'm going to be popping in and out of chat so I can have my full screen up here and be able to see everything. So let us jump right into it once I can get my window up. Okay, so title of the talk is Transformative Equity, the Power of Inclusive Quality Standards. So first of all, let me introduce myself. Even though Luis did an amazing job, I'm going to hire him as my publicity person, I think. Besides my super sweet style and cool tattoos, I'll start off with a visual description of myself. My pronouns, I use she and they pronouns. I'm a light-skinned Latina woman with very short, dark curly hair, shaved sides and back. I'm wearing a black and white sleeveless romper, I think they're called. It's like a top and shorts. I'm not very fashionable, so I just call it what I think it is. That has skulls and plants and flowers on it. Behind me is a sage green wall and some plants and various figurines. Professionally, I have a Bachelor of Science in Human Resources Management and a Master of Education in Learning and Technology, which is essentially instructional design. I am an instructional designer. I'm also a DEIA consultant, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and a pretty fierce disability advocate. On a more personal note, I'm a mom and I am queer, disabled physically and visually, neurodivergent, Latina. I'm fueled by the 3 C's in my life: coffee, cats, and comedy. And I bring the Big Bella energy with me everywhere that I go. Oh, I also like to inform people that I do move around a lot and need to change positions or stretch. So you may, glance away and look up and see my face right up in here. Don't be scared. It's just me changing positions. And I also have cognitive disabilities. So at times I may say the wrong thing or struggle to find a word. So please bear with me. And at any point, if you don't understand what I'm trying to convey, by all means, like toss it in chat and say, hey, Bella, can you say that in a different way? I'm not quite following. I'm not understanding. This is a safe space and there's absolutely no bad questions or feedback or anything. Unless you talk about my style, that probably is not what I'd like you to do. So cool. All right, let's move forward. Introduction. Before we even jump into it, I do want to give like a foundational, like a primer of what is inclusion and accessibility, because there could be folks here that are not really familiar with inclusion and accessibility. You may just be starting out on your learning and development journey. So I want to make sure that I make this presentation inclusive to everyone, regardless of their position within learning and development. So inclusion is a behavior. It's a result. It consists of the behaviors and actions that proactively recognize, respect, and welcome diversity. Inclusion values people's unique ideas and lived experiences, and it ensures that they feel involved, respected, connected, and that their voice is heard. So some examples of inclusive actions are making sure that you're providing a safe space for people, ensuring your language and actions are trauma-informed and welcoming to all, incorporating diverse perspectives and voices in the decision-making processes, encouraging employees to take time off for cultural or religious holidays that are important to them, and making sure that the workload is distributed fairly so that no one feels pressured or feels resentment that they have to work for someone who has different, cultural traditions than they do. And in terms of learning and development, offering training and development opportunities to employees from underrepresented groups, as well as offering opportunities for learning and development to employees regardless of their level of education. You also want to make sure that you're ensuring the material and content is diverse. And then finally, being a champion for inclusion, proactive outreach to employees and potential employees, speaking up and always learning. And with that, I'm going to switch back to the chat because I feel like I miss out so much when I can't see it. Wendy, loving my headphones. Thank you. I forgot to add that to the visual description because I think it's important. I'm wearing the Razer Kitty, I think they're called, headphones with kitty ears and lights because I have my air conditioning on because it is very hot in here and this is really good noise canceling. Let's see. Oh my goodness, I'm seeing all the welcome messages. I love it. I'm going to scroll down here. Does anyone have any questions so far? I want to make sure that I give a little bit of time after each slide to address any questions that are specifically about the content on the slide, but also ensuring that we have enough time at the end for Q&A. Thank you, Risa. Yeah, they changed colors, but I haven't quite set that up yet. And I know the chat has a lag, so I'm just going to take a coffee here for a second in case anyone has a question on inclusion. Otherwise, I will move on. And I probably should mute that because I'm using a pretty good mic and you can probably hear my swallowing, so forgive me. All right, we're going to move on. Accessibility. Okay. So accessibility is the design of products and environments that can be used by people of all abilities. So this includes folks that have physical disabilities, cognitive disabilities, sensory disabilities, as well as non-disabled people who need additional accommodations. Accessibility is actually a subset of inclusion. If an environment isn't accessible, then it's not inclusive. So when we talk about accessibility, we can talk about some of the specific examples of accessible design and content. So in communication, using gender neutral and non-triggering language, including multiple means of receiving and delivering communication and feedback. So that would be things like instead of requiring everyone to be in a Zoom with video and audio on, allowing folks to be able to have their camera off if they're uncomfortable, allowing someone who has a speech disability to be able to type instead of having to present their information verbally. And in terms of visual accessibility, including a visual description during virtual and live events to benefit people that have vision impairments or are only listening via audio. That's something that you heard me do at the beginning. I gave a description of myself. That is for anyone that is blind or visually impaired. Or imagine if someone needs they are non-disabled and they need an accommodation to be able to feel like they're interacting with the event, such as a new father that is sitting on the couch away from the computer and, feeding his newborn baby, right? He wants to feel like he's able to, see what's going on within the digital, event. So by providing a visual description, he's able to gain different perspective into who is this person that is talking right now. And then continuing on with visual, just ensuring that images have alt text and image descriptions and that you're using sufficient color contrast. There's no such thing as quote unquote inaccessible colors. It's the contrast between color combinations that is inaccessible. And so in terms of technology, making sure that you're offering alternative input methods such as voice recognition for people who cannot use a standard keyboard or mouse, using clear and logical layouts and designs in digital content so that people who use assistive technology can navigate it with ease. And in terms of environmental spaces, creating physical spaces with ramps, elevators, accessible restrooms, and other features that enable people with disabilities to access the space and its services. I understand that typically as someone in L&D, we can't, redo a physical space, right? But what we can do is, go in and take account if we know that, like there's not enough room between tables, we can ask a venue or somewhere in our organization, let's put more space so that someone with a wheelchair or someone that uses a walker would be able to navigate these spaces accessibly. And then finally, taking sensory needs and aversions into account for physical and online spaces. So I'm going to pause again, go back to chat here. Daphne says, I loved that you described yourself and your setting. It's the first time I've ever been at a presentation where someone has done that. So helpful. Yeah, Daphne. I actually learned that when I was at another, I was presenting for Expedia on a mental health awareness month panel a couple of years ago. And when they told me that I had to, come with a visual description, I thought, well, what is that for? And when I looked into it, I was like, wow, like it's so beneficial on so many levels, because even for people that are able to see me on camera, when I go into additional details, like saying I'm Latina, saying that I have tattoos, or, saying that I have a lot of plants behind me, it just adds that extra level of, I feel like, context, I can't say that word, familiarity. And also, I just think it's really cool because you could hear my description and be like, oh my gosh, I love rompers. Like, where did she get that from? And while that might not be very helpful professionally, it's all about community. It's about everyone feeling like we belong. It's about being able to connect with one another on even the most minute things about our lives, right? Let's see here. Oh, I see, Gwen. Yeah. Aloha from Hawaii. And all the love being poured to you, Gwen. Christy says, mirror belonging. Even small things in common have proven to increase sense of belonging. Absolutely. Absolutely. I met one person in L&D mostly because we loved lipstick. And so, I mean, it's just amazing the things that you can connect over, right? Okay, so let me pop back over here because I definitely want to make sure we have time to get through all of this. All right, let's move forward. Okay, I'm gonna have to click this again. I had animations in this and I found out that sometimes they don't work, and I thought I removed them all. But fun fact for you, when I'm trying to go through and look at the animations, it has a little marker in PowerPoint and the color contrast is not sufficient for me. I am colorblind. So I thought that was a little bit funny as I was trying to remove those animations before this call. So this is just a fact I want to share. I say this often, and I really want folks to get this into their mind. I want it to be like an intuitive, just natural thinking that comes forth. You cannot be inclusive if you are not accessible. I want to say that again. You can't be inclusive if you're not accessible. And this is something I really try to talk about a lot, because a lot of professionals that are in the DEI space, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, they forget about accessibility. And yes, they may be diverse. They may be, maybe they think that they have an equitable environment and they're being inclusive. But if I step in that space and I can't see the graphics because they don't have sufficient color contrast, it's not accessible because I'm excluded, right? Okay. So now I want to do a very basic primer on quality. So QA, quality assurance, and quality standards. Because again, I don't know the level of everyone here in L&D. Some of you may not be from L&D, which is absolutely fine as well. But let's talk about quality. And I'm going to refer to it as QA for the most part, quality assurance. So quality assurance, or QA, is all about ensuring that our products meet specific standards that tend to give both management and learners confidence in their effectiveness. So in learning and development, QA takes on a special role because it ensures that the materials that we use to facilitate learning are not only top quality, but they also align with the needs of all of our learners, right? So if you're an L&D professional, this is a crucial aspect of your work. So now that we just have that basic understanding of quality assurance, because it's a massive field, right? Let's explore, I'm getting tongue-tied today. Let's explore how inclusive quality standards and QA rubrics, which are, think of a rubric like a spreadsheet, right? A rubric, a matrix, a framework. But let's explore how inclusive quality standards and QA rubrics play a pivotal role in ensuring equity. So when we're talking about QA frameworks, one of the things that most organizations are quick to ask anytime we want to implement anything is, what's the ROI? What is the return on investment? So return on investment is a tool or an equation that measures the profitability of an investment. So in our context of learning and development solutions, ROI can be measured in the financial benefit that results from the implementation of a QA process, right? So imagine you're going to your boss and you're like, hey, I really think that we should start doing, inclusive quality assurance. They typically want to know what's in it for me, because let's be honest, as a manager, you want to be able to prove that you're doing great things within the organization, right? But also, what's in it for the organization? How is the organization going to benefit from this? Okay. So it's on us to prove that there is going to be an ROI, that there is going to be a positive return on investment for implementing an inclusive QA framework or set of standards. So some of the things that are part of the return on investment would be improved learning outcomes. By implementing a QA framework, organizations can ensure that their learning and development solutions are of high quality and meet the needs of the learners. So that can lead to improved learning outcomes like increased retention of knowledge, improved job performance, and higher engagement and motivation among the learners. Cost is a big thing. They all see dollar signs, right? We all do. So you can have improved cost efficiency by implementing an inclusive QA framework. Poor QA can lead to higher costs, because imagine when you have to do like rework on, let's say, like a safety and compliance training, right? If you have to rework, that's additional time, additional labor, additional money that goes into it. Imagine also when you have non-compliance, if you have someone who went through like a safety training, and because you didn't have an inclusive or even just a quality assurance standard in place, period, you have some sort of accident, right? Like if in your manufacturing facility, someone has an accident, they operate a certain machine incorrectly, then you have decreased efficiency as well, right? And we talked a little bit, I kind of combined those two when I'm talking about compliance. But a QA framework can help organizations improve compliance rates and mitigate the risk of non-compliance by ensuring that their solutions meet regulatory and compliance requirements. Organizations can avoid fines, legal issues, and other related costs. And finally, improved employee retention. Have you ever been, I'm going to go to the chat for this one as I ask this, because I want to see the answers. Have you ever worked for an organization and you're in training, and as soon as you start seeing like the video or the content, you're like, oh my gosh, this is either offensive, it doesn't apply to me, I feel like I'm not represented. Where did they get these people from? Who created this, right? Wendy, oh my God, yes. Okay. Yep. Devin says almost every job, often. Of Kara, yeah. Kara says, of course, I judge the organization based on onboarding experience. Preach on that one. I have no shame in saying this. My last employer, I had we had to do like a compliance training, and they had outsourced it with another organization. And apparently it was through the legal team who did not go through it. HR didn't go through it. Nobody really went through to make sure that this was something inclusive to put out to everyone, right? They had this annoying character, and it was just a standard white dude, right? And as you go into the section on disability, this really chipper, dude is now in a wheelchair, and he looks very defeated. His head is hanging down. He has this, what I call a sad sack face, right? And just looks miserable. And his head just hangs down, and he just slowly wheels himself into the room because, oh, woe is him. He's disabled. He's in a wheelchair. And I immediately stopped, and I was like, no, like, I can't even go through with this anymore because it's ridiculous. You don't get someone to pretend that they're disabled if you're inclusive. And this was on inclusion and accessibility, mind you, right? This was like DEI training. You get someone who's in a wheelchair. You don't get someone who is non-disabled to pretend that they are disabled. And even worse, to make it seem like disability is this horrific thing, right? Let's see. Cringe. Yeah. Big time. Christy says, and putting a negative perspective on being in a wheelchair. Absolutely. A wheelchair is a mobility aid. It empowers people. It's not anything bad. Okay. I'm glad to know that I am not alone with those horror stories of trainings and organizations. But just imagine, I mean, like Kara said, you judge an organization based on their onboarding experience, right? So imagine what that does to employee retention. Can you imagine someone who is a wheelchair user who would have went through that same compliance training I did during the start of their time at a new company, how they would feel? Like horrible. Absolutely horrible. Okay, let me move along because I want to make sure we have time for questions and answers at the end. Okay, so now let's move into inclusive QA, quality assurance, incorporating inclusion and accessibility in QA frameworks. So this is how we're going to amplify equity, because we have inclusion plus accessibility plus consistency. What do I mean when I say consistency? When you have a quality assurance framework or a rubric or standards, that is where you're ensuring consistency, right? Because you have something on paper, metaphorically speaking, or digital, where everyone who is creating learning or training or materials for the organization has to follow those same rules. Okay. And you have it set up as like a scorecard, and you have specific criteria on that scorecard that everything that's being produced in your organization has to meet before it is released out into the wild, so to speak. So let's be real. It's hard to remember everything that we want to do if we're just going by, just memory alone, right? Even myself, there's times that I've gone into events and halfway through, I'm like, oh crap, I didn't give a visual description of myself, or shoot, I forgot to give my pronouns. And for me, I mean, I have to put that into my speaker notes so that I can remember. And then sometimes I still forget, right? But if you have quality standards and you have a framework in place, you have something there where anybody in the department or the organization who is working on, learning, training, development, facilitation, they have those same rules. They have that same resource that they can follow through. And you do need to ensure that you're very clear in what you're putting in that rubric, right? Because you can't just say sufficient color contrast. Well, there's different levels of color contrast with WCAG. You have like AA and AAA, right? And it depends on what size the text is. If it's an element, like a clickable element, like a button. So there's a lot of different standards within each one. So what you do is you just make sure that you're very clear about each criteria within that framework, right? And in amplifying equity, it's not just about checking all the boxes. And when I say checking all the boxes, if you're not familiar with that phrase, it means um, when someone may be able to explain this better than me. Feel free to in the chat, but I'll try my best. Checking all the boxes is like an organization that gets a sheet of do this, do this, do this. Okay. And so it's not about just going through and doing like what you're told, checking the boxes, right? It's about being personally invested and wanting to be transformative, right? And so essentially, inclusive QA goes beyond the surface and amplifies accessibility and inclusion and overall impact. When we embrace inclusive quality standards, then we're building environments that are not only diverse, but also engaging and empowering. And I'm going to switch back to chat and I'm going to indulge in one of my 3 C's, which is coffee. And I forgot to mute again, so I apologize if you heard like my loud throat. Oh, Daphne, I love that. Daphne says, going through the motions just to check the boxes. Caffeinate loudly. Daphne, you're my new hero. Jared says, when something is performative. Yeah. Annabelle, any good resources anyone can share as, oops, I have to scroll back up, as an example of this sort of checklist guideline? Someone mentioned WCAG, WCAG, and I always forget what that stands for, but that is extremely difficult for someone to follow if they're just getting into learning about accessibility, because those are very technical and it's more geared for web developers. I actually teach a course on inclusive quality assurance. Right now it's not up, but I do have a wait list available, and I totally forgot to add it to this presentation. But yeah, reach out to me. I forget who said that because the chat is just like boom, boom, boom. But yeah, anyone like reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to be able to like send resources your way, have a chat. Yep. And yeah, I am forgetful, so please do reach out to me. And I have my contact information on the last slide here. So, all right, looking at the time, I need to get back here. We're almost done. Okay. So, what are some of the strategies that you can take to ensure that you're amplifying equity, that you're being inclusive, that you're being accessible? First of all, you have to decide on the criteria that you and your organization want to meet for your quality standards. So, one thing I always try to remember is make metrics matter, triple M. So, review your existing materials and practices, gather feedback from stakeholders, review industry best practices, analyze data. Data is really big. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations may not have existing data that you can analyze and try to improve upon. Consult with experts, and finally, just decide what is important to our organization. Other strategies you can do, you can align with OKRs and KPIs. So OKRs stand for objectives and key results. It's a goal setting framework that helps people define and track their goals and their progress. And so objectives are specific and measurable goals that an organization wants to achieve. And they typically need to align with the organization's overall strategy. So objectives always answer the question, what do we want to achieve? Key results. Oh, I forgot part of this. Someone help me with KPI. What is the P? Performance? For some reason, I did not type performance in there. I'm pretty sure key KPI is key. Nope. It's not key. Key performance indicators. Thank you so much, Christy. Oh my goodness. I don't know what I did there. I entered it completely wrong. I'm such a dork. Okay. So anyhow, KPIs are the specific measurable milestones that help the organization achieve its objectives. So they should be time bound and quantifiable so that progress can be tracked and measured. So if you've heard of SMART goals, specific, measurable, I think the A is achievable. I can't remember what R or T is. I know T is time measured. I forget what R is, but that kind of is combining OKRs and KPIs, in my opinion. And KPIs will always answer the question, how will we know if the objective has been met? And then finally build it. You know, the saying, like, if you build it, they will come. And you can see that I'm going to go back. I did not build out the final part of that slide. I forgot to update that, so forgive me. Every session I do at any event, I always have one thing that I mess up in my slides. So y'all know I'm human. But just building a culture of inclusion, accessibility, remember that creating that culture is an ongoing process and it requires ongoing learning and growth. Keep exploring new resources, seek out feedback and support, challenge yourself to think more deeply about how you can create more equitable and accessible solutions. Something I typically lead a lot of my presentations with when I'm going deep into inclusion is sit in your discomfort. You may feel uncomfortable as we talk about certain topics. I want you to sit in that uncomfortable feeling, self-reflect, and think, why am I feeling uncomfortable? The majority of the time, it could be because you sit at a place of privilege. It could be that maybe you see yourself in something that is being discussed that isn't always positive. And that's okay. Like, we're all learning. We're all trying to be better humans. So just sit in that discomfort, self-reflect, and try to understand why. And by staying committed to these values and incorporating them into your work, you can make a meaningful difference in the lives of everyone that you serve. And now we are at Q&A. I'm happy to answer any questions. As I said before, this is a safe space. And if you're not comfortable asking something on publicly, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to toss this up there and I'll toss it up again right before we go.
Hey, Bela, got one for you just real quick to start out. Oh, actually, there's quite a few in the QA area. There was one earlier, and I know that there were some replies to it. I'm just going to show it on the stage here. Christy Kittle kindly copied it and posted it here in QA. I can't recall the original person that asked it in chat, but is digital accessibility and accessibility the same? So digital is redundant.
Yeah. So no, they are not the same. People often use them in the same way, but essentially when we say accessibility, we're referring to both physical and digital spaces. So when we say digital accessibility, we're talking about online content. We're talking about anything on paper. Even though it's not technically digital, it's not a physical space. It's not someplace that you enter into as a person. And again, they are used interchangeably by a lot of folks. So no, digital accessibility is not redundant. But if you work in an environment where you're working remotely, then most often you're just going to be saying accessibility because it's understood that it's digital accessibility. But yeah, digital accessibility would be like a subset of accessibility.
Okay. And then Nazrin Nazemi, sorry if I mispronounced that, but this is a really big question. Is it possible for an organization to be inclusive of each and every single one of their employees' numerous diverse needs, and how? Let's see, answer that one, Bela.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think anyone can reach 100% unless we know every specific personal detail about every single person. with that said, we need to do our best, right? We need to think outside of the box. But yeah, not everything can be met, but that should be the goal, right? So if you find out within your organization that someone's needs are not being met, someone is being excluded, speak up. Whether it's yourself or someone else, find a way to speak up and let it be known to the organization, because they may not know. They absolutely may not know. It might be something that is not part of the quality standards they have in place. HR has never encountered this situation before, right? I was trying to think of a specific example, and I can't think of one right now. But yeah, I don't think I think it is possible to be 100%, especially like in a small organization. But just trying to get as close as you can to that should be the target.
Yeah, that's the goal. Andrea had added, a colleague of mine shared a really neat term called access friction, which is this very situation.
Access friction. Interesting. I'll have to like go down a internet rabbit hole looking up that, because I've never heard of it.
All right, I got one from oops, sorry.
No
I
worries.
got one from Katie Burke. Are there virtual networking groups that specifically focus on inclusive learning, or other virtual L&D groups you would recommend?
Interesting. Yes. I'm trying to think here. I'm going to type it into chat as well. And for anyone that is not able to get it from chat, like reach out to me and I'll be happy to share it. Equalize Digital, I think is what it's called, is one of them. They are an accessibility firm, I believe, but they host a lot of different webinars that are free for folks. One of my favorite series that they do is they get Alex Stein. I'm going to put his name in here because he is an amazing human. He is blind and he works in accessibility, and they will do a live audit with a company with their permission, and the company will be there, right? And they will go through, Alex will go through live through their website and be able to say like, hey, this isn't accessible. And it is so enlightening to see someone who is blind, someone who is a screen reader, who works in accessibility, live going through a website with the person who has built or owns that website, right? So that is a phenomenal one. International Association for Accessibility. Sorry, I had to say that acronym like in my head. So IAAP is the International Association for Accessibility Professionals. They're the ones that do certification for accessibility. They put on a ton of free events, a ton. So definitely like go to their website and look at some of the events that they do. If you WordPress accessibility, if you are in WordPress, ooh, Kat, congratulations with your I guess you say CPAC. I'm working towards that as well. Yeah, their events are great. WordPress accessibility puts on a lot. I'm trying to think of other ones. There's an accessibility meetup, and I forget who puts it on, please. Who puts it on, please? I'm trying to like read the chat at the same time. But Meryl Evans, she is involved with a lot of them. I can see like the image in my mind, but I can't remember the names. May you repeat the name, please? I'm not sure which name. Isamari. Oh, the certification? Yeah. International Association of Accessibility Professionals. And yes, I always do a sing-song voice when I'm typing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, these are great. Let's see. I'll go ahead and let me move on to the next one. Let's see. Don had posted this. I'm not sure what that one means, Don. MMM for AAA.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. I love it. Yeah. So the MMM is the make metrics matter, what I said earlier, and then AAA would be the AAA level of accessibility with
Oh,
CAG.
love it.
Yeah.
There you go.
I like it. That's good.
Excellent. Okay, Ashley has one here. Is there a QA framework or rubric template that you have that is a good starting point?
So again, yeah, I do teach. I'm actually going to get that form up here right now. I teach a course on this. I think I have some students in here too. If you were a student in my course, like toss up some love. Let me make sure this is. But yeah, in terms of getting started, so in the course, wow, this really hates me. Sorry. I cannot like multitask trying to get this form and talk at the same time. In terms of like a rubric or a framework that you could start off with, there's, I can never remember the acronym for it. OSQC, OSQCR. I can't remember it. If anybody knows what it is, I'm going to look it up. OSQCR. Because I do it in my course. Yeah. OSCQR. Let me toss a link up. Yeah. Thank you, folks. There it is. It's not too in depth. I think it's not, overwhelming, I should say. What we do in my course is we look through several different ones and you actually build your own custom rubric, however you like. But the OSCQR, I absolutely hate that name. It's just too much to say, is a really good place to start. And if you go to that site, I'm trying to remember where it is, but it'll have the rubric or framework. I forget what they call it exactly. And it's freely available to download. The CDC has one as well. Let's see. Trying to think here. I'm going to toss the link in here for the waitlist for my course. Jennifer says, pronounce it like Oscar. Oh my God. Y'all are teaching me. I can just leave the stage. Oh my gosh. I freaking love that. Because I always struggle to try to say like all those letters together. Everyone that said Oscar, I love you. You have made my life easier.
Wow, I think that's a great set. I mean, people are posting some really helpful links in there. So
yeah,
that'll definitely be something we need to gather up and share.
For sure. I'd be happy to like compile this and put it into something. Are there tables after this?
Oh yeah, there are tables.
Okay.
Do you want one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to go to a table. If anybody wants to continue talking or listening, feel free to join me at a table.
Hey, how about a few more questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see here. Do you have some resources on calculating ROI on learning? I've seen some case studies, but few address the cost. Most managers are often concerned about taking employee time away from work tasks.
That is a wonderful question. I'm going to stop sharing just because it's a little overwhelming for me right now. Okay. Stop presenting because I want to close out PowerPoint and be able to look at some resources here. If there's another question, go ahead and toss that up because I know what I'm looking for here.
Yeah, and there were a couple of comments that answered, like Gwen did post the ROI Institute from Jack and Patty Phillips.
Yeah.
And Oscar Jennifer Baker added that. And so let's go to the next one.
Okay.
This one came from chat, and I can't recall who it was from. Sorry. I love when you said you can't be inclusive if you're not accessible. Can you expand on this a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on just one second before I get to that. I found the ROI stuff that I was looking for. I'm just going to toss a few links in chat. Let's see. Actually, I'm just going to copy this. It's like in reference style, so it's going to come through as a big wall of text. Hopefully that got everything. It did not. Okay, hold on. Y'all, I'm such a nerd. I love this. Like, I could sit and answer questions all day. Okay. I love when you said you can't be inclusive if you're not accessible. Can you expand on this a bit more from chat? Absolutely. I'm going to use myself as an example. So, and I'm going to type this in case folks, I'm queer, I'm Latina, I'm colorblind, and I am physically disabled. When I say that I'm physically disabled, I do have issues with like my joints, like with severe arthritis and hypermobility and a lot of pain. Sometimes I can't walk really well, and a lot of like hand issues as well. So let's say I go into an event space and trying to think. Okay, I go to a restaurant and there's plenty of room for me to go in with my walker slash rollator. For those who don't know, the walker rollator is the thing that you push that has wheels on the bottom that helps you in being able to walk. But let's say that the tables have enough room in between them that if I'm using my walker that day, I can, navigate freely. It's a welcoming space in terms of like, welcoming queer folks. Let's just say the restaurant is owned by two gay dudes, okay? And let's say that they have the menu in both English and Spanish. Okay, so that's pretty cool. But let's say the menu has all these wild colors. And let's say they have the background of the menu is white and the lettering is a pastel yellow. I won't be able to read the menu. Even though they were inclusive and they made sure that I had physical space to be able to navigate in there as someone who occasionally uses a walker, they made sure to be inclusive to folks of different gender orientations and sexual identities. They made sure to be inclusive to folks who may speak Spanish. So in those ways, absolutely, they were inclusive. But if I can't read the menu because there's not sufficient color contrast, am I included? No, I'm excluded. So that's why I say that you cannot be inclusive unless you're accessible. Like it's just, you can't. You can be accessible and not be inclusive. So they could have a menu that is accessible for someone like me who's colorblind. They could have it in English and Spanish and let's say Vietnamese as well. But they could have signs up that say, true love is a man and a woman only, right? So they were accessible for me, but were they inclusive? Because I said that, I am queer. And I just gave an example of like a typical hate, poster you might see. So yeah, since accessibility is a subset of inclusion, it has to be met in order for a space to be inclusive. Please repeat that line. Cannot be inclusive. I'm not sure if you're referring to just the general line that I said earlier. You cannot be inclusive if you're not accessible. Sure, absolutely. Ooh, I like this question. Do diverse needs ever conflict? If so, how do you address that? Yeah, I mean, absolutely diverse. Well, I don't know if I would say so. Yes, yes. I'm trying to figure out how to put this. So let's say um, one of my bestest friends in the whole wide world is here in chat, and he is Muslim. So he eats halal, which means the meat has to be handled in a specific way, and he does not eat pork. And so let's say that you have someone else who is Jewish and they eat kosher, which has a different set of guidelines. I don't know as much about Jewish. I forget the word for the diet, but for something to be kosher and for something to be processed in a way that is acceptable. So those two needs would clash if you're having like a lunch event or something, right? But you can ensure that you are meeting both of their needs. So you could ensure that you have options that would be halal for someone who is Muslim, okay? And then you can be sure that you have options that are kosher for someone who would be Jewish. You wouldn't want to impose one or the other on either of those people, right? But you can accommodate both needs. Yes, Anna Maria, thank you. And there's my other C, my cat. You saw coffee. I hope y'all saw comedy.
So timely.
Yeah.
All right, Bela. Well, thank you very much for hitting our time. We've been at an hour. It's exactly
Nice.
9 a.m. Pacific time. Thanks for opening the session, Bela. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I mean, opening the event.
So much love to all of you. And yeah, quick break and I will hop into some tables if anybody wants to like continue chatting.
Give me a second. I just have to I have to create the table, but I do want to mention Christy Kittle is going to be also has a table in there now talking about inclusive learning deliverables. A little worried about that one, Christy. It might be super popular, so not everybody's going to get in, but message me because I'd be happy to set up a session room for you if you want one to have everybody come in and discuss via chat and all that stuff. So keep me posted. And yeah, Bela, I'll have that table set up for you in just a little bit. And again, thank you so much for doing this.
Awesome. It was my honor. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Gwen is going to be here talking about delivering inclusive and accessible in-person training. We'll see you there that's at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.